President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin have both been reacting positively after they spent 2 hours talking on the phone. Well, in the last hour, the American leader has posted on social media about the talks. He said he believes the call went very well, adding that Russia and Ukraine will immediately start negotiations towards a ceasefire and, more importantly, bring an end to the war.
It doesn't seem as if much has changed. Remember, America, European leaders and Ukraine had been pushing Russia to sign up to a 30-day unconditional ceasefire. Russia hasn't done that. Russia has been resisting that all along, and still after this conversation there's no talk about a ceasefire now. However, Mr. Putin's press secretary Dmitry Peskov, after Vladimir Putin's comments, said, I think in an attempt to flatter Donald Trump, talked about how Russia saw America as a neutral party now and basically blamed Europe for wanting the war to continue, trying to drive a wedge between America and Europe and trying to flatter Donald Trump.
Ain't no way a ceasefire happens. He's playing Trump. I think he's playing Trump for sure. A ceasefire could happen in the future, but I think he's, I don't know. Look, I can't, as you guys know, I don't make predictions on Vladimir Putin, okay? Adolf Hitler does what he wants to do. Looking at the way he's moving, at least on the battlefront, I think he's looking to position himself further and further inside of more Eastern Ukrainian territory before he's willing to concede on a ceasefire. Because from what I understand, I try to read the tea leaves to the best of my ability, as many people do in this process. It's very hard to know what's exactly Putin's ambition here. He's generally an untrustworthy person. Please stop making predictions. You're too on the ball. No, I'm not making predictions, but what I'm seeing from what he's doing is I think he wants further and further incursion into Eastern Ukrainian territory. And like part of what the dispute is right now is additional permanent annexation of 4 territories, including areas that he has not conquered, right? Including areas that he hasn't actually militarily engaged or has seen enough success in. For that reason, I suspect he's like trying to use the negotiation process to undermine America's involvement in Ukraine by constantly telling Trump, like, I'm going to do a ceasefire. I'm going to do a ceasefire. You're the GOAT. Zell Disney. He's gay. He's woke. He's the, Kamala Harris, basically. I'm your guy. And I think he's using the positive feelings and positive association that Trump has with him for some reason in an effort to claim that he's interested in a ceasefire while simultaneously getting a lot out of lowering the aid that the American government has for Ukraine. And this obviously weakens Ukraine's position on the battle lines. This allows Russia to actually use the fake negotiations that they want to engage in to basically push further into Ukraine. I think that's what's going on. And eventually there will probably be a ceasefire if Vladimir Putin is able to take over more Ukrainian territory, push Ukraine into a worse position overall. Even though I can't comprehend how much worse Ukraine's position could get here in this process, because Donald Trump's ceasefire negotiation that he brought forward at this stage is literally awful for Ukraine. It basically offers de facto recognition of conquered territory to Russia and a legal recognition of annexed territory in Crimea. And on top of that, it's a mineral deal for America to extract rare earth minerals from Ukraine. It's got it all. It's horrible. And Putin is still saying no. And it seems to me like the reasons as to why he's saying no is because he wants 4 additional territories to be covered in this ceasefire negotiation, and maybe even a disarmament of Ukraine, which is ridiculous. A disarmament of the Ukrainian forces is an absolutely insane demand to make. I don't even know if that's like actually what he is presenting as something that he wants, or he is doing the classic art of the deal where he puts out a lot of ridiculous demands and then scales back on some of those demands in order to make the rest of his demands that are also still ridiculous look less ridiculous by comparison. Russia is not saying anything about wanting a ceasefire. They're winning on the battlefield. That's not true. That's not true either. Russia has absolutely claimed that they want a ceasefire, Sally Hemings. This is not true. you're saying this because Russia is not showing that they're interested in a ceasefire now, but they absolutely have said that they wanted a ceasefire. That is 100% false. They said it, and I think they're using the ceasefire negotiations as a way to cut into the relationship that America has with Ukraine. That's what I think is going on. I mean, they're just lying. Yeah, they wanted a ceasefire when they were losing, and they still have maintained the position that they want a ceasefire. It's just that they want peace to be no NATO, disarmament of Ukraine, and recognition of the territories they can demand because they won the war, is what you're saying. Except the reason why they're quote unquote winning the war, which again is incredibly costly. I think a lot of people forget how costly this has been for Russia as well. This is an incredibly costly endeavor for Russia too. They cannot permanently occupy these areas. I don't even know how they're going to try and maintain the annexed territories inside of eastern Ukraine. I think there's going to be a ton of terrorism. There is going to be tremendous insurgency inside of the captured territories, an insurgency that will also bear fruit even internally in like Moscow and shit. When you have freedom of travel, freedom of movement from annexed Ukrainian territories into the rest of Russia, you're going to see a shit ton of angry people that are going to do terrorism. How much terrorism has there been in Crimea? That is not a comparison. That is not an accurate comparison, because look at the ways in which they took over Crimea and the ways in which they are trying to desperately hold on to eastern Ukraine. That's the reason why there is no comparison there. They want 4 territories that combined have a pre-war population of over 1 million to 2 million population. They didn't win/loss for a 30-day ceasefire. That's not going to happen. Yeah, I think the reason why Russia is doing this is Vladimir Putin knows he can manipulate Donald Trump. He knows he can manipulate Donald Trump because he's in he has good favor from Donald Trump in a way that like Brandon never would have even entertained. But also on top of that, he knows that Trump rose to prominence, rose back into power by claiming he was going to pack up this Ukraine stuff. He has actively been able to change the minds of a lot of people in the base of the Republican Party into having favorable opinions over Russia, which is crazy. I mean, Republicans broadly don't want to keep giving money to Ukraine. They see it as like a partisan issue. Ironically enough, this is why I always try to get the Democrats to hit this from a partisan angle as well with Israel, to be like, Republicans want endless money to go to Israel. What is that about? You know what I mean? That's a great way to start the conversation, because you're leaning on American selfishness and American individualism and American exceptionalism in a way to one, present yourself as earnest and actually for peace, while simultaneously hit the Trump administration in a way that truly would hurt. Republicans have done this successfully, partially due to, I guess, like a little bit of FSB involvement, and partially due to the same motivating principles that I explained of like selfishness and not wanting to continue giving money to Ukraine. Is it not true that Zelensky's political career is based on the war continuing, just like in Israel? The Chapo ep with the Ukrainian reporter was very enlightening on this topic. I mean, I think Ukraine is fucked regardless, whether it's still Zelensky continuing the war or not. Like, his own personal ambitions are irrelevant in this process. Ukraine is not even a part of these conversations. Anyone that tries to tell you Ukraine is a major player in these conversations, I think is wrong. People get mad at me for saying this, but like, I think his opinion is worth nothing in this process. And the reason why I say that is because look at Trump. He literally belittled, humiliated Zelensky at the behest of Vladimir Putin in these ceasefire conversations, when Zelensky is seen as an extension of American interests in the region by every party involved, including Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin was able to successfully get Donald Trump to undermine his own proxy before coming to the table with the most favorable deal imaginable for Vladimir Putin, which was an insanely unfavorable deal for Ukraine. It doesn't matter who gets to run Ukraine in the future, especially in the near future, whether it be continued by Zelensky or whether it be a more radical, more nationalist element that ends up running Ukraine, or even the less likely option, which is like an Atlantic Council choice liberal that is more of a hawkish element in Ukrainian politics. None of those things matter. Atlantic City Council is what I said. Yeah, New Jersey, baby.
On hopes for a ceasefire, this seems to be, stretching out with no specific time frame at the moment. Yet we know that President Trump is very impatient. So where do you think that's going to lead to?
So one of Russia's hopes is that President Trump will get tired of the whole thing and simply say that the United States is not going to be involved anymore. And this would be an end of economic aid and end of military aid to Ukraine. So, of course, that benefits Russia.
I don't know if this is entirely correct. I think Russia's goals here are to continue the supposed interest in ceasefire negotiations in an effort to extract more concessions from Donald Trump and specifically stop the American aid to Ukraine, for sure, in a way to weaken Ukraine's position. So it's literally easier to take more territory. It's easier to take more territory. There's no like, oh, let's just wait it out. It's attrition. I think that at the end, they will arrive at a stalemate and they will come to the table for a ceasefire. It's just increasingly less likely with every passing day that this will happen with a favorable position for Ukraine, unless there are more troops. And I've said time and time again, the only way to bring more troops into Ukraine is by either engaging in the act of mass deportations in cooperation with the Ukrainian government, mass deportations of Ukrainian men living in the Western world right now, living in Poland and living in America, and forcibly sending them back to Ukraine so they go to the front lines, get trained and go to the front lines. And even that process would take an incredible amount of time, or to make up for that lack of military power somehow with, I don't know, private security contractors or actual standing militaries from European armies. Now, obviously, or reduce the age of conscription, but that's the nuclear option, and I don't even think that that's going to happen. Like, I that would be horrible. That would be the most horrible outcome of all of this. Would be to lower the age of conscription in Ukraine down to 18, especially at a time when it's 25 or 27 at this point, and people are evading the authorities inside of Ukraine. The ass cancer guy was the one that suggested that. It wasn't just the ass cancer guy that suggested it. Trump's Mike Waltz also suggested it. I mean, he's gone now, but the Trump administration had also entertained that notion. Many people forget. The Trump admin, one of the first things that they said was, hey, you got to lower your age of conscription to 18, which would, for the record, if you don't know why that's so dangerous, that would destroy the entirety of Ukraine's future.
Militarily, Daniel, what position are Ukraine and Russia in right now with regards to prosecuting this war, continuing this war?
Russia has been making progress against Ukraine in the last 10 months, but it's very slow, really incremental progress at best. Russia has taken staggering losses. So although many people describe Russia as having the upper hand, and that's probably true, the actual military advantage it's gained has been quite slight. So we're not likely to see dramatic changes on the battlefield in the coming months, unless, of course, we see an abandonment of Ukraine by its allies, in which case Ukraine runs out of ammunition and, in general, may suffer catastrophic loss.
So are you saying at the moment Russia doesn't see any strategic interest in a ceasefire?
Russia believes that Ukraine's going to crumble if it keeps hitting it, and especially if the United States and Europe abandon it. So a ceasefire, especially a long-term one, is probably not in Russia's interest, according to how Putin defines it.
As a major advocate for ceasefire from the jump, let me tell you how not shocked I am to hear Russia now say the same shit that people who falsely thought Ukraine was destroying Russian troops and Russian forces repeat the same exact talking points of like the globe emoji Twitter accounts were saying for years. Russia is saying the same shit that globe Twitter accounts were saying about Ukraine for the longest time, to be like, oh, a ceasefire would simply be buying time for Russia to re-up, rearm, and then attack again. Now Russia is saying that about Ukraine for the prospect of a ceasefire, where they're like, oh, a ceasefire without like disarmament implies that you're just simply trying to re-up and rearm so you can attack Russia harder, re-up and rearm Ukraine. Ridiculous. Do you believe the West will try to rearm Ukraine during the 30 days? Oh, for sure. I think so, but it doesn't matter. I think the only thing you're doing at this stage is just like trying to desperately cling on to more marginal victories in terms of like eroding more of the Russian forces, I guess. And that's all you're getting out of this. One evil way in which Putin also wins is demolishing morals. A lot of soldiers Google Putin Trump news on a daily basis before going on assaults. It's in their phone search history. Sad stuff. Had a bet with my friend, which they lost because they thought Trump would wrap this up in 100 days coming into office. Yeah, there was 0% chance. There was 0% chance Trump was wrapping this up because he has, dude, the greatest example here is Israel. Trump has an endless amount of power over Israel. Trump does not have a lot of power over Russia. Obviously, the maximalist position, but not even the maximalist position, but close to the maximalist position of resisting against Russia happened under the Brandon administration, and that didn't actually yield the results that people thought it would get. Trump has no motion with Russia. There's not really anything he can do. It ends when Russia says it ends. Like, we've already maxed out on the sanctions against Russia, and clearly there are very, not even like super sophisticated, but there's just like a very successful means of avoiding said sanctions. I mean, while this has been a costly endeavor for Russia as well, it's clear that they have more manpower.